In the days of ancient Greece, the word for actor was Hippocrates. A hypocrite in those days was someone who simply wore a mask and played the part of a character in a play. But by New Testament times, the meaning of this word had changed, and a hypocrite became someone who wore a mask in real life, pretending to be something that he wasn't. There are lots of examples of hypocrisy around us. We find them in literature, in history, and in life, of course, and dare I say it, we find it in the church as well. But in Shakespeare's Othello, for example, Iago appears in the beginning as an honest and a loyal friend, but deep down it turns out that he's a nasty man who's plotting to destroy the prince. And I wonder if you remember Graham Richardson. Do you remember Graham Richardson, the former Australian senator? Lots of nodding heads here. He was a minister in the Hawke and Keating governments, and he was a ruthless political player. And sometimes he was known as the senator for kneecaps. After he retired, he wrote his memoirs. I don't know, has any of you read his memoirs? Nobody? All right. Well, in his memoirs, he admits the duplicity, the dishonesty, and the trickery he used to achieve political success. It's quite an amazing thing to admit it, isn't it? But the trouble with such hypocrisy is that you can only hide the truth for so long. You can't fool all of the people all of the time. And as well, hypocrisy makes you live a double life. It causes you to live in fear because you're worried about getting caught out. And it destroys reputations when the hypocrisy is uncovered. And it destroys relationships too. And it leads others astray. And worst of all, it draws us away from Jesus Christ. In last week's gospel, Jesus summoned his disciples and he gave them a mission to go out and to help and to heal the people of Israel and to proclaim the kingdom of heaven. In today's gospel, we heard him give his disciples some good advice. And he tells them 3 times that they should not be afraid. And he says that everything that is now covered will be uncovered, and everything now hidden will be made clear. What he says as well is that what I say to you in the dark, tell in the daylight, and what you hear in whispers, proclaim from the housetops. He's talking to us, of course, because we're the disciples today. We're the disciples today. And what Jesus is actually saying to us is live openly and honestly in the clear light of day, and most especially, avoid being hypocritical. Jesus often thunders against hypocrisy. He knows it's one of the most dangerous of sins. In Matthew chapter 23, he says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You're like whitewashed tombs on the outside, but on the inside you are full of dead men's bones and everything unclean." Damning words, to be sure. In the year 2017, Pope Francis said that Jesus railed against hypocrites because the language of hypocrisy is the language of deceit. He said it's the language the serpent used with Eve back there in the Garden of Eden. It begins with flattery and it ends up destroying people. It tears the personality and soul of a person to pieces, he said. It destroys communities and it hurts the church. Psychologists tell us that the root of all hypocrisy is the desire to be loved and accepted without judgment. But surely there's a better way for us to learn love and acceptance. It's by living honestly, by living authentically, and by living a life of humility as well, telling the truth about things as they really are, being honest about who we are as people. People who are honest and humble don't need to lie. They don't need to paint false pictures. They accept who they are with all their strengths and their weaknesses, and they understand what they can and what they cannot do. And whatever is missing, they make up for with faith and love. Jesus' message for us today, I think, is this. If you are serious about being his disciple, if you're serious about living a good Christian life, then avoid hypocrisy, because there is no reward in heaven for hypocrites. I'd like to close, if I may, with a little poem written by a Canadian by the name of Grenville Kleiser. He was a man who taught public speaking at Yale Divinity School many decades ago. But it's a rather nice little poem, I think, and it goes like this. You can fool the hapless public. You can be a subtle fraud. You can hide your little meanness, but you can't fool God. You can advertise your virtues. You can self-achievement laud. You can load yourself with riches, but you can't fool God. You can magnify your talent. You can hear the world applaud. You can boast yourself somebody, but you can't fool God. It's worth remembering. You can't fool God. And there's no point even trying, because he's even counted every hair on your head.